You're now listening to the Adiel Gorel Show. Each episode I'll bring you the latest news from my discussions with top health and wellness experts so that you can bring yourself into better health. Today on the Adiel Gorel Show.
And then I'll talk sometimes to women individually and they'll say, well, can you help me without me ever having to mention that I was actually faking it and that what he perceived as being pleasure was actually displeasure. That makes it hard, right? Those are, sex is a very, it's a very vulnerable area.
Well, we can even extend it. I mean, when we know about when somebody is in prison, and one of the worst punishments is to be in the hole by themselves for a month with no human contact or even speaking to anyone, we know it as a huge punishment. And so apparently this social, the being with is important. In the case of sexuality, it's much more. Even walking down the street holding hands is an experience that by its nature, I would even call it sexual, because you don't do it, again, in the heterosexual world for just a second, you don't do it with your man friend, you do it with your female friend, stuff like that. So I think that sex would be very important. Of course, we don't even go into all the orgasm is looked upon as that special moment where you lose control completely. You give control up. Some people say that's the moment that we are closest to the, whatever word you want to use here, God, the universe, creator, whatever it is. So, I mean, it seems to have many special ramifications. Having taken several courses in Tantra, you think about running the sexual energy, which is very hot, around your system and letting it enable some other parts of you. Some people know how to run the sexual energy down from what is called, the second chakra, all the way into their speaking, their head. And so, yeah, it does have a spiritual. And when you talk about a man and a woman combining and maybe, completing the circle, both in the genitals and in the mouth, now you have 14 chakras where, the energy can flow through. So there's all of that, which some people are listening and say, come on, give me a break with all of that stuff. But I mean, that takes me to my next question to you. So some people, you just say he or she has a lot of charisma. They're just a charismatic person. How much is sexual energy a part of that?
That's an interesting question. I mean, can I throw that back at you and ask you what you think? I haven't really, honestly, you're talking about just the magnetism that someone has when they enter a room and, what is that magnetism? I mean, I definitely think of the chemistry that can happen between two people and a kind of an innate, instinctive kind of attraction that seems to defy logic, but I would love to hear a little more from you about the connection between just that magnetic energy that an individual has with sexual energy.
Well, this is only my tiny opinion here. And I take it beyond the magical, attraction. You walk into a room, your eyes meet across the room, all of that stuff. That's a beautiful thing. But I'll talk about something else. You have several speakers in a conference, okay? All very good material. You go to conferences all the time. Okay. And here is one professor, doctor speaks. The content is beautiful, but the presentation is a little bit anemic. It's weak. And here comes another person and they just blow up the stage. And, so that's the kind of charisma that I'm talking about. And I personally believe that sexual energy has a lot to do with that. Because again, if we go back to the model that we have all these things in us, we know our brain is here. Some people would say our crown chakra is here. Okay, we know we have something here. We know we speak, we know that. We know we have a heart, yeah? We have a solar plexus, and we know that our sex lives down there. I mean, what they call second chakra. There's the first chakra. So, I mean, we know sexual energy is hot. You can feel it. You can feel it in any circumstance. So if people naturally, without even trying to do the tantric, except they just can channel that from down there when it's hot, the fire is burning. Now the fire starts to come in their speech and in their thought. People can feel it. Again, I'm not saying it as an expert because I'm not.
No, I mean, I think it's a very unique thesis, and I love that idea. And while you were talking, I was thinking, well, I think of myself as a decent enough speaker, and where does that come from? I don't know the level of charisma I have, and I was thinking, well, maybe it comes from just some experience, some confidence, a level of self-esteem. But you are right that somebody could have a lot of confidence and not have charisma, or have a lot of self-esteem and not have charisma. So maybe like when we talk about chemistry between two people, it's maybe also the chemistry that exists within one person. Maybe they're two sides of the same coin in some ways. Maybe it's the same energy just being directed in different ways. And maybe we all have that energy, and so we all have the potential to have that level of charisma individually and with another person.
When I think about attraction, again, I'm talking in the heterosexual world, but of course, I'm sure the same thing is in all other kinds of interactions, of course. Remember, you told me about that young man who said, I chose my mate based on logical considerations. She is smart, she is funny, we enjoy, but I don't feel the same spark as I did in my crazy relationship before. Okay. So attraction also, I mean, I believe there's something there that is two sides of the same coin, that something manifests. You can't explain it. You meet some people and, all the cliches now come to the fore. She says, oh, you know what? I know I should marry a good boy, a good man, but I'm attracted to the bad boys. Mm-hmm. I'm attracted to the bikers, the, outlaws. I'm just attracted to those guys, but I know I shouldn't marry them. Yeah. So there seems to be this, discrepancy between what is the turn on, the attraction, the sexuality versus our concept of what a partner should be.
Yeah, I think that attraction can be socially constructed, in some ways by culture and society. And, this idea that, he's a bad boy, or, she's hot and wild, and that's where sex belongs. And attraction, you can't have that when you're picking someone who you want to have children with and co-parent with. And I think that's that's a big mistake. I think if anything, when we're picking a partner, I'll go out on a limb, maybe the thing that we should privilege the most is sexual attraction, because isn't that the thing that most differentiates a platonic relationship from a romantic relationship in many cases? So if anything, it should be very, very, very high up on the list. But a lot of people don't believe it's possible to integrate the two.
Yes, and in fact, there is the old dilemma that I believe is centuries old, if not more, millennia even. The Madonna horse, thing. It's like, I mean, you look up to your woman. It's always from the male standpoint when we talk about millennia, ago, but now it should be both the same way, male and female. So the bad boy, the biker versus the good guy, or some women even say, I want a nerd. I mean, it feels safer and good, but I'm attracted to the biker guy. And Madonna whore, it's the same thing. You look up to the mother of your children, you look up and you put her as a Madonna. And now in your mind, you can't make the connection, or at least that's what we heard historically, into the bedroom. So, It seems to be a little bit complicated, but I agree with you based on my limited life experience. Sometimes you just can't explain it. You meet with two people and you're attracted to one of them in a way that you just can't explain. You just want to hold their hand. Never mind sex. Of course, sex is part of the whole thing, but you want to hold them. You want to cuddle them. You want to kiss them. You want to. The other one may be more beautiful in every respect, but not the same. You know, I think about the old, this is probably not a good example because I don't know the backstory, but from the reader of the media, which that's not saying much, we remember the story of Prince Charles, who is now King Charles, and Diana versus Camilla. So many people would say, are you kidding me? And yet he was attracted. Yeah, so, I mean, what do you make of all of that? What is that special spark that can't be really quantifiable?
I think it's a special spark that can't really be quantifiable. I mean, it's to me, it's something that you can't like locate in the body or necessarily locate in the brain. And you know, there's so many theories. Is it based on how our parents, you know, modeled us? Is it based on society and social constructs? I really don't know, but I think I just appreciate that it's something that's very important and it's very instinctive, and it should be listened to and heeded, and that it can help us make very important choices for us. That rather than deny that chemistry, or that, we should be very open to receiving it.
Even the word chemistry, implies certain things. People talk about pheromones. People talk about smells. There's some stuff that is still not quite measurable effectively. Maybe in 100 years we can. Oh yeah, of course the enzyme is triggered. Oh, of course we can see it, but now we can't. So we just have to go with chemistry. Going back to what you talked about, the men. You said you have young men with ED, and it's not physical. It's not physical. Their blood flow is great. Everything is great. It's the confidence. So what do you do in your practice to allay that issue with the confidence, the performance anxiety, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of a friend of mine, Dan Water, he has a new book coming out. I think it's called like When the Penis Speaks. And he says the penis sort of says two words like yes and no, and when it's saying no, when we want it to say yes, it's actually kind of, he would say, a trauma response in some ways, even if it's the trauma of just failing from a performance perspective. And so, it's trying to protect us from some kind of negative experience that we've had in the past. So we have to untrain, and we have to kind of reverse that belief. When I'm working with guys who have ED, I mean, first of all, I approach sex therapy from the approach of combination therapy, and that there are biological lenses and psychological lenses. So I do think we have some medications which are very, very helpful in terms of helping us connect and work through some of that anxiety and keep the blood flowing to the genitals. Because, basically when a guy with psychological ED loses his erection, he's having a panic attack. He's having an anxiety attack, and literally adrenaline is being produced in his body that is telling him either run or fight. But the blood is literally leaving the penis and going to the hands and going to the feet, right? So that's a hard response to undo, that panic response. I mean, that's really supposed to help us really avoid danger. So using some medications, especially in the beginning, to keep the blood flowing to the penis in light of that adrenaline response, I think is important. And a lot of men will say, well, I don't want to take that. Why would I ever take Viagra or Cialis or the generic versions? And I will have that conversation. The other thing that I try and do is really take the emphasis off of intercourse, because so many of these men will say that's the main activity that causes the anxiety. It can be during sex itself. Transitioning from the kissing and the touching into intercourse is what causes the shutdown. Or it can be 10 days earlier, knowing that on this night there's going to be sex. I mean, it can be completely outside of the bedroom. And so often what I try and do is just take the emphasis off of intercourse, and I focus on outer course, all of the other ways that we can give pleasure that do not involve just a penis in a vagina. Outer course is amazing. Outer course offers us so many different ways to pleasure, and it takes this act of intercourse and it says that's just a behavior to choose from. And that's the way I believe it should be, a behavior that we can choose or not choose. But I meet so many men who are their own worst enemies. No, it has to be like this. I have to show up with an erection, and I have to use that erection, and I have to penetrate with that erection. And I meet so many women who will also say, that's the way I want to have sex, right? So sometimes you can have a guy who's very open. You use the word relief. People are looking for, these men who I'm working with are looking for relief. And so in many cases, they will say, sign me up. I would love to take the pressure off of my penis. I would love to take the pressure off of intercourse. But then you may have a partner, could be male, could be female, not heterosexual or anything, has a very rigid idea of what sex should look like. So I think more than anything, in working with any sexual problem, having a psychological flexibility is the most important aspect. If I have two people sitting in a room and they have the willingness and the desire to work on a problem, and they have flexibility in terms of how they define sex and how they approach arousal, we will get to a solution. And we'll actually get back to intercourse. It's just going to be a longer road to get there.
So you talked about the male side. What about the female side, where there are women who might be feeling pressure as well, that they need to show that they had an orgasm? Now, maybe they enjoyed greatly, but something didn't quite click and get to that point. I mean, how much pressure do you see on the female side when it comes to that?
The same. It's called spectatoring. It's a term that Masters and Johnson, two of the original sex researchers, coined. This idea that when we're not really absorbed and present for the sex that we're having, that we're often watching ourselves have sex, and we're watching some aspect of how we perform. And that performance is connected to cultural beliefs. Adiel, I talked about the sex script, and that every couple or person usually end up with kind of like a sex script. And if it's not working, it's usually in the context of, well, what is the social sex script in which the personal sex script is being created? So I think that there are lots of reasons why people watch themselves having sex. And as soon as you start to think about yourself and watch yourself, well, then you're not absorbed in the sex. You're not in it. And you're not going to get those levels of arousal. And a lot of women, will say, well, there's all these beliefs like, oh, well, what's wrong? Every woman fakes it at some time or another. And what's the big deal about faking it? But, all you're really saying is, I don't want to communicate about how to be sexual, right? I'd rather just take this shortcut as opposed to having real communication. So it's just a symbol to me of an overall avoidance of communication that's happening around the topic of sexuality between two partners.
So it was interesting that when we were talking about the male side, you said that they have a rigid idea. That's an interesting choice of words. But if we go back to the female side, and you just mentioned faking it, and what's the big deal? At some point, I assume if a person is faking it, yes, it's a shortcut, but doesn't it feel a little bit self-defeating? Doesn't it feel like something happened that's not in integrity?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will work with a lot of couples, and it's clear to me in talking to them that the woman, his female partner, has been faking it, even if the guy doesn't know. And the guy is like, well, I don't get it. Like everything was working before. Like what changed, right? So like there's just. And then I'll talk sometimes to women individually, and they'll say, well, can you help me without me ever having to mention that I was actually faking it, and that what he perceived as being pleasure was actually displeasure? That makes it hard, right? Those are sex is a very, very it's a very vulnerable area, and unfortunately, our egos are all too fragile in that area.
It occurs to me that if I go back to the tantric teaching, obviously I looked at it from the standpoint of the male. They teach you how to delay ejaculation, how to have a body orgasm, so to speak, or basically the idea is to go long, like in football, go long, young man. But they say, the traditional Chinese medicine says that a man gets weakened by his ejaculation, that certain life energy is being spent. So they even have like a rough formula as to how many times you should ejaculate at every age. Obviously, there's a difference when you're 19 versus 79. You shouldn't ejaculate, as often. So let's say a 75-year-old, from a traditional Chinese medicine standpoint, I think they shouldn't ejaculate more than once a month. Let's assume this is it. I don't remember the details. But let's say they're with a partner who they enjoy touching and they have good attraction to. So if they want to follow these traditions and not deplete themselves, they will have sex for 30 days. And then one day they will ejaculate. Mantak Chia talked about he only ejaculated when he wanted kids. Anyway, so the man now is having sex 30 days in various formats without ejaculating. For the female, it could be the same. So once again, if there's shame around, oh, I didn't come, I should come, I come. It's a result-based, goal-oriented, anxiety-producing system, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I don't know that I really subscribe to the idea that we need to reserve our ejaculations and orgasms in order to have power. I mean, there's been, there's that tradition like the night before a big game that an athlete is, not supposed to have sex because he's going to expend his essence in some way. And there's been nothing to demonstrate that is actually true. I think what it means is if he doesn't have an orgasm, it means he's not going out and staying up late and partying with the other athletes, and he'll be able to wake up and be fresh and and be focused. But I do believe that we should not be so results oriented. And I sometimes, even as a critic of myself, some women have told me, hey, with she comes first, like kind of puts pressure on a woman to have an orgasm, or turns women in a way. I think that this is going too far with the argument. I don't agree with it, but I think it's interesting that in she comes first, you're really basically making the woman an orgasm object, and it's just a different form of objectification that comes with its own sense of pressure. And I think that is very valid. It's just not the perspective from which it was written. It was written to be actually very pro-female and feminist, and but I think it was a very valid criticism of the book.
Well, I don't think necessarily of the book, but I think in general, the man might feel very virtuous in saying, no, you don't understand. I put her first. Her pleasure is first. I come second, and they feel virtuous. But you're right. By doing that, already you're putting the headlight on the woman. Say, okay, listen, hey, well, yeah. So, there's a trap there. Would you say that in an ideal universe, wouldn't just exploring and getting great joy from the skin on skin, the lips on lips, the touching, the everything, let it flow wherever it flows without expectations, and whatever happens, happens. Wouldn't that be ideal? But I know that it's very hard for it to be the case.
I think that's true, and I would just add to that, and this, I know we're probably headed out of time, which is, it's not just the idea of skin on skin, it's mind to mind. One of the biggest things I notice in couples' sex scripts is that everything is very physiologically based on generating arousal, as opposed to being focused on generating mental arousal. And we know that women, there's research that shows that some women are able to fantasize their way to orgasms without touching themselves. And sometimes when I'm working with men who have psychological ED, I'll say, well, go home, and the next time you're watching porn, which is what guys will do, is keep your hands at your side and tell me what happens. And these guys will come back and say, yeah, within 5 minutes, I had a really nice, workable erection without even touching myself. So psychological stimuli can be coming from watching, listening, experiencing something, or in a face-to-face manner, creating something with someone else. But to me, psychological arousal in concordance with physiological arousal it creates the complete picture.
So, Ian, if somebody was watching this, listening to this in their car, and they say, I like this guy, I want to work with him, or my wife and I, or my girlfriend and I, or my boyfriend and I, where are you based? Do you see clients? Do you see people by Zoom? Please tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So I'm here in New York City. I have an office in Soho, Manhattan, which is where I am now. And I see anywhere from 20 to 30 patients a week. I'm going to be seeing couples until 9 o'clock tonight. And, during COVID, I was able to do a lot of Zoom sessions with people out of state, but really I'm licensed in New York State, so I need to keep my practice as a licensed mental health provider to New York State. So if you're in New York State, I'll meet with you via Zoom, or I'll meet with you in my office, which is my preference. And otherwise, I would really encourage you to pick up my most recent book, So Tell Me About the Last Time You Had Sex, because it was really designed to sort of have me with you when I can't be with you.
Ian, I want to thank you so much for your generosity of being here. I know that you have a full day. You just described how full it is. So we don't take it for granted. Thank you for taking the time to be with us and enriching us with all of this information. And we're looking forward to seeing you again in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Adiel. This was a very stimulating, interesting conversation. So thank you.
Thank you for joining me today for the second part of our amazing interview. If you didn't catch part 1, don't miss out. The link is in the description below for you. And be sure to click the subscribe button for more videos.